So let's get started. My name is Jared Jones. I'm a program coordinator here at Inner City Capital Connections, and I work in Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, and Memphis cohorts. So some of you I know, some of you I met, most of you haven't, but that's not a problem. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to also pass the mic to my colleague, Sam Figueroa, just to introduce himself.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, I'm Sam Figueroa, also a program coordinator here. I appreciate you all joining us. We're really looking forward to this great panel and discussion.
And Cheryl Leilani.
Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl Leilani. I'm also a program coordinator here. Glad to have you all with us, and just wanted to let you know if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to drop them in the chat.
All right. Now I want to introduce some of our panelists here. Beginning with our moderator, Bianca Bloomquist. She manages Small Business Majority's legislative efforts statewide and outreach efforts in Northern California. She develops relationships with small business owners and stakeholders to empower the voice of small businesses in California. Bianca leads the Federal, State, and Grant Assistance Committee for the City of San Jose Small Business Task Force on COVID-19 and serves as liaison to the Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy Committee in the California State Legislature. Prior to joining the Small Business Majority, Bianca served as a legislative aide on Capitol Hill for a number of House financial committees. So Bianca, we're glad to have you. I'd also like to introduce Rahama Wright. Shortly after serving in the Peace Corps, Rahama launched Shea Galeen, a DC-based social impact beauty brand that creates pure plant-based shea butter body care products that create living wage jobs for women in Ghana. Rahama is redefining beauty, proving that nourishing our skin with the purest, most lush plant-based ingredients does not preclude us from empowering our sisters across the globe. And through her brand, she's reimagining the way we do business to build a more equitable future for all. I'd also like to introduce Darren Bascom. Darren Bascom is Proverb's founder, and the creative vision behind its unique approach to brand building. Under Darren's leadership, Proverb has become a sought-after partner for brands seeking to apply design thinking to their businesses, products, and communications. A native Bermudan who cut his teeth in exhibit design, Darren set out to create a company, the type of agency that the industry tends to lack, one that is dynamic, international, and culturally relevant. Darren's work has won numerous awards and drawn the attention of international media outlets, including Fortune, Fast Company, the New York Times, and the Boston Globe. He has served in various capacities on boards of the Museum of Fine Arts, Massachusetts College of Art and Design, and Youth Design, among others. I'd also like to introduce Irene Lee. Sorry, one moment.
Yes, okay.
Irene Lee opened My Restaurant in Boston in 2013 and has spent the years since driving the industry forward in ethical sourcing and fair and transparent employment practices, including open book management. Now Irene and her team are evolving My into a packaged dumpling company. She serves on the boards of Project Bread, the Haley House, the Food Project, and Loving Spoonfuls. I'm gonna pass the mic to Cheryl to introduce Keisha. Okay, I'll introduce Keisha, no problem.
Sorry about that, everyone. I believe I was on mute. So Keisha Haymore is an author, speaker, and social entrepreneur. She's the founder of Hey Friend, a platform with a curriculum that teaches people how to build genuine, authentic relationships. She has more than 10 years of experience helping people and companies build connections that change lives and transform careers. She's been featured, on National Public Radio, Success Magazine, Huffington Post, Essence, Black Enterprise, Fox 2 News, Nine Network, The Business Journal, and more. Additionally, she's also led a TED Talk called What I Learned from Meeting 100 People in 100 Days.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. I'd like to give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves, and we'll just start off with Bianca.
Hey there, Bianca Blomquist, Policy Director for Small Business Majority. My bio was already pretty long, don't really need to get into it, but I'm really interested to hear what the panelists have to say today. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to participating.
Excellent. Anyone can go. Anyone of our panelists, feel free to introduce yourselves.
I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Irene Lee. I am originally from Boston and have been a small business owner in the city here for 10 years. I started out running a food truck with my brother and sister. We then moved into restaurant operations. We wrote a cookbook. We had a line of sauce. So I have explored many of the kind of areas of small food businesses. And right now we are turning Maymay, my company, into a packaged dumpling brand with a 5,000 square foot factory opening in South Boston in January of next year. So we are very excited about that. And in addition to that, I and two of my other colleagues run Prep Shift, which is a startup coaching and consulting business. And we support other small business owners, especially food business owners, who want to invest in their teams and make their businesses more profitable. And my goal with that is to leverage my own experience and the privilege and resources I've had access to make sure that we have a vibrant, independent food system here in the Northeast. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for being here.
I can go next. My name is Darren Bascom. I'm the founder and managing director of Proverb. We're an agency focused on placemaking and place branding, and we routinely partner with commercial real estate developers. We work with municipalities, oftentimes to drive a new narrative to support economic development. We work with cultural institutions, higher ed institutions, healthcare institutions. And we do this work primarily in cities all over the country and occasionally beyond. And we most recently have just launched the rebrand and new campaign for the Bermuda Tourism Authority, Lost Yet Found, and it's really sort of a reshift of the country, and then really sort of inviting travelers, and not just tourists, and really looking at how we can sort of have Bermudians sort of share their perspective on the country to those who come to visit, as well as we also launched the City of Boston's all-inclusive Boston campaign. It was our new travel campaign that was launched inside of COVID, really to support both the reopening of the city, looking at ways in which we can catch people up to what the city's become, but also to support an equitable recovery. Really
Hi,
excited.
everyone. Oh.
Sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rahma Bright. I am in Washington, D.C., and I am the founder of Shea Aline and launching Yaleen Beauty Makerspace next year, the first shared commercial manufacturing space for early stage beauty entrepreneurs. I always say I had no business starting a business. It was completely accidental. I served in the Peace Corps, working in West Africa and Mali at a community health center. And during that time, I was in my early 20s, and I saw a lot of disparities that women in my community were facing in terms of being able to access health services for themselves and their children. And many of them couldn't afford it, really, basic things when it came to caring for themselves and their kids. And it propelled me to research income generating activities for women. I learned about a product that we all use, shea butter. And shea butter is a natural resource that comes from Africa. It's only grown in sub-Saharan Africa across 21 countries, and there are approximately 16 million African women who are part of this global supply chain. And the majority of them make less than $2 a day. And so as I was learning and seeing a lot of the issues surrounding where this product is sourced, I noticed a huge disconnect in terms of the market. So who's making all this money from shea butter was the question I had, and discovered that the way this product comes to market is not done in a way that allows women to take their labor and their knowledge and actually profit from it. So when I came back to the US, I launched Shailene, and the vision and the goal was really simple. Help women in their rural communities take a natural resource that's in their backyard, transform it into a value-added product, and then connect that product to the US market in a way that allowed them to generate living wages. And so we do that by organizing cooperatives. We provide women access to capital. We give them access to the tools and the resources that they need to make products that then earn them 5 times their country's minimum wage. We sell through select Whole Foods markets. Last year, we launched with Macy's. We also have a partnership with MGM Resorts. But during COVID, we lost like over 70% of our revenue because a lot of the places that we were selling either closed their doors temporarily, or there was just issues with supply chain. And so the advent of creating the Yaleen Beauty Makerspace came out of the experience of dealing with COVID and seeing not only my business being impacted from a supply chain perspective, but also hearing from a lot of other small business owners in beauty, and seeing that many of us did not have like a place to land and figure out how to strengthen our supply chains. So launching the Yaleen Beauty Makerspace is connected to my brand Shailene, because we're going to do one of 2 things. We are continuing to help our suppliers in Africa by connecting them to a collective of beauty manufacturers here in Washington, D.C. So I thank you for giving me this ability and platform to share my story, and I look forward to the conversation.
Do we have any other panelists that haven't yet had an opportunity to introduce themselves?
I haven't introduced myself.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandria Thompson, and I have a company called More Than a Sipping Tea. It is a parent company to our products called Your Ginger. And what we do, we uniquely handcraft premium ginger-based teas. I started the recipe many years ago and never shared it with anyone. Didn't have any intentions on making tea, but my neighbors knocked on the door one day, and I happened to be brewing the tea for a summer drink, and she tasted it and said, "You have to bottle this and sell it," which I wasn't trying to do that, but she challenged me, and we began to put the drink out there, and next thing I know, became a community affair, and people started asking for it. Long story short, we ended up at Rutgers Food Innovation Center out in Bridgeton, New Jersey, to submit a 4-ounce bottle. And they really loved the drink. I didn't have to have any modifications to it. So that meant I had a perfect recipe, perfect pH levels, and they just thought it would be a drink that would really help a lot of people. So we ended up naming the drink to Ginger, drink yourself happy, is the motto. And that is just to bring that sense of that connection of feeling happy while you are drinking a great drink. And ginger is really known for its medicinal purposes. And I love it because it's very authentic. We use nothing but fresh organic ginger, fresh organic produce, which we purchase from our local farms. And it's just become such a commodity and such an awesome product because people, they like talking about ginger. They like having that sense of well-being. And I hope to really get to a place where it can become in the market, where we can become distributors to young people, because a lot of them like to want to buy it anyway, and they want to be able to sell it. So to develop that entrepreneurship and have them to be able to create a model where young people can sell the product, we can get the product out to different schools, different companies, and restaurants and hotels and that sort of thing would be really a great fit for a lot of for those who really like the drink, like ginger. So I'm looking forward to doing some great things with it, and hopefully you guys can try it and be able to tell for yourselves what you think about it. I had the opportunity also to inherit a farm through Rutgers Food Innovation Center with Dr. Ayani, which is a biology food science. So with this being said, this is so much to it, so many components to it that I had no clue as to what I was doing, how I got involved in this. We went from a 4-ounce sample to hundreds of cases now, thousands of bottles, and I'm like really kind of like overwhelmed with the growth of it. But again, it's a really great product that provides a self of well-being, and like I said, it's really great.
Well, thanks, Andrea. I mean, I think that's a wonderful intro to the topic of conversation today, which is really, from what I'm hearing already from folks, you know, how can we give all of these folks who don't feel like they necessarily know how to do all of this, the tools that they need to do that. That being said, we have one more panelist who hasn't yet been able to share a little bit more about their business. Keisha, I don't know where you just went. You're somewhere here. Would you mind just giving a quick intro for us really quick?
We can totally get on with the conversation, and I can introduce myself as we, go on with the questions.
I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. So very long intro. Thanks for bearing in there. I hope you've gotten the chance to get to know all of our amazing panelists today. As a friendly reminder, today we're going to be talking about technical assistance, business owners who've not only served as technical assistance providers themselves, but have participated in a lot of the technical assistance programs and resources across the country. So as a lot of folks are participating today, thinking about how they want to start developing their programming for 2023 to better support small business owners nationwide, we're hoping that you can bring all of these experiences to the table to help all of our amazing technical assistance providers help other small business owners. So with that, let's jump right in here. Rahama, you mentioned that you are on the mission to build the first commercial shared manufacturing space to help emerging entrepreneurs in the beauty industry. My first question for you, we're about to be 2023. It comes as no surprise that sustainability, I think, is definitely the name of the game. Unfortunately, we don't always hear small business owners and sustainability in the same sentence. So, what advice would you give to technical assistance providers that are hoping to incorporate living wages and sustainability practices into their business models?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. And I agree with you. I think that oftentimes people think, let me first build my business and get profitable and make as much money as I want to, then I can invest in the causes that are important to me. And I believe that from day one, business models need to be ethical and sustainable. I think that it should be the DNA of all businesses. It shouldn't be an afterthought or something that you do, through your philanthropy efforts, which we see a lot of larger businesses doing. When it comes to technical service providers, when they're trying to advise small businesses who want to incorporate sustainability into their business models, I think the first step is learning. And for me, I had to become an expert in the issue that I wanted to tackle. I had to understand everything from how the shade tree grows to who sources the material, harvests it, the connection to the local community, the connection to the environment. So I think the first step is being able to have kind of a data room of resources and information that you can give to small business owners that are looking to incorporate sustainability into their models. I also think partnerships are important. A lot of times people want to do things by themselves. They want to be, the hero of the story, or, I figured this out all by myself. And I think that you can leverage the knowledge and resources of other organizations and even the private sector to help provide some of those resources to small business owners and startup organizations. So, what are your local universities doing in terms of research and sustainability? What are some of the other businesses in your community that are doing things around renewable energy or solar? There are a lot of resources in the communities, whether it's a city or a town. And so I think being very well versed in some of the resources you can tap into and kind of connect to the small businesses you're servicing. And then lastly, local government. I think that, local government is there to be a supporter, to be an amplifier, and to engage, because they want to make sure that they're building a strong tax base in their cities and their towns. And so being able to be an effective service provider to entrepreneurs and small businesses, you have to have those local relationships with policymakers.
I love that. Thank you so much for your insight, and we'll come back to you in no time, but it actually leads pretty nicely into some of the questions that we've had for Darren at Proverb. Darren, you've played a big role in the All-Inclusive Boston campaign, which was a marketing campaign for, surprise, City of Boston. But that's very much aligned with the mission of Proverb, especially when it comes to adding value to places. So I'm hoping that you might share with us a little bit about what is placemaking, and how do you envision the roles of TA providers in the placemaking space? And I think this meshes very well with some of Rahama's comments on, public-private partnerships and the role that cities play in the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Thank you for that. At Proverb, almost everything that we do sort of lives at an intersection between, research and strategy, design and storytelling, purpose-driven places, and a real sense of vitality and a sense of belonging. And and one of the things that was really pivotal when the city put out its RFP was that they wanted to reopen the city, but as I had mentioned earlier, they also wanted to do it in a way that supported an equitable recovery. And so even the language within the RFP allowed for partnerships. And so as a result, we partnered with another small business, Colette Phillips Communications. It's a Black women-owned PR firm. And then we also partnered with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And it really allowed us to be able to get up to speed very quickly. But it also allowed for the city to pick, a combination of vendors that ordinarily they might not have, but for that language being in the RFP. As we sort of, thought through the campaign, and all of this was heavily driven by market research. We wanted to try to sort of move beyond a lot of the sort of stereotypes around the city and really try to catch people up to what the city has actually become. Boston's 140 languages are spoken inside the city. It's become increasingly hip, vibrant, as a amazing culinary scene, amazing cultural scene. And so out of that, a campaign that really allowed us to be able to showcase more of the city, to really kind of, center and promote, BIPOC and immigrant-owned businesses, but we didn't stop there. We expanded it into, our LGBTQ plus community, looking at how we can incorporate people who are living with various abilities, looking at how we can incorporate artists alongside sort of the well-known places that the city is known for, and really trying to take that tourism spend and create opportunities for as many residents of the city to really benefit from that. And so that's sort of an example of a way in which we've been able to kind of sort of reimagine or sort of remake the identity or around the city in terms of what ordinarily would just be seen as a travel campaign. But we take that same kind of thinking, and work with say, for instance, real estate developers, and it might be someone who's doing a project in a location where the story isn't obvious, or in a community that's been underinvested for a long time, alongside working on things with that might be in their urban core. And one of the things that we really believe at Proverb is that powerful brands are always connected to purpose-driven organizations. And so we'll take our insights, sort of our brand story, and then really look at how that can help to inform architectural decisions, or how that can help to inform interior design, or a style of hospitality, or a retail strategy. And when those things are really done effectively, you walk into a place, and it's the type of thing that you experience or connect with at a level that's sort of much more emotional, and not just based on pure utility.
Thank
Does that help,
you.
Laura?
That's really beautiful. And I like how you said, taking what would have been maybe your quintessential or traditional travel dollars, and thinking about how to, drive some of that business and that awareness, therefore, to these small businesses, the corridors, and the stories that are really behind all of them in the communities. So I look forward to discussing more with you about that. Pivoting just a little bit, Chef Lee, would love to ask you a couple questions here. So it's May Dumplings, the name of your small business. So in addition to running a restaurant and successfully pivoting through the pandemic, by the way, you're in the process of launching an app to help restaurant owners better manage and support their employees. Would love to hear some of your thoughts on what you think the challenges, some of the specific challenges are that small restaurant owners face, as well as their workforces. Oftentimes we know with small businesses, they hire their neighbors, their family members, their friends, and tell us a little bit about this app and how you see it fitting into this puzzle.
Thank you, Bianca. So this project is called Prep Shift, and we do have an app, and we offer a number of other coaching and consulting services for small food businesses. I think that in small businesses, and especially restaurants, so many resources are totally analog. So pen and paper, or maybe if you're fancy, a spreadsheet in Google Drive. But there is a need for business owners to meet their employees where they are, and where they are is on their phones. So we've really thought about how to take the key elements of a positive employee experience and to put that into a format that is accessible to people, not just because it's on their phones, but also because it's in the languages that they speak, it's at a reading level that they can understand. And broadly, Prep Shift is really about finding ways to align business owners and their teams. We want to make it easy and demonstrate that it's profitable to invest in the people who work for you. I don't think anyone opens a small business deciding that they want to be a terrible boss. But if we are working under the assumption that in order for you to win, your staff has to lose, then it becomes, a very adversarial relationship. And in the end, I think everyone loses, right? Because that hamster wheel of failing to retain staff and then not having a great culture, that just keeps going and going. And I think, like many other business owners, but restaurants in particular, owner-operators do everything. They are the plumber, the amateur electrician, human resources, procurement. They are the artist in many cases, designing the food. And so wearing so many hats, it can be really hard to come up for air. So our goal with Prep Shift is to use some of the kind of best practices and tried and true strategies, both from my restaurant and other restaurants around the country, and to make it so that folks do not have to reinvent the wheel.
I love that. And thank you for underscoring that dynamic. You know, I think that it's simply not the case that small business owners don't care about their employees. It's just not. And there can be that kind of sentiment that floats around. And there's a big difference between a small business owner, you know, not offering benefits to their workers because they're philosophically opposed, or small business owners struggling to afford it. And that's a very different conversation. And so I really love that you're thinking about some of those tools to help drive that narrative home, because I think everyone would agree that's definitely the case more often than not. So thank you for sharing that. Keisha, hey friend. Listen, I just have to tell you, we were doing some homework and for these questions, and my colleagues were so impressed with the work that you've done and super excited for these questions too. They were impressed by all of you, by the way. But would you share with us, so you were recognized as a thought leader in social innovation and entrepreneurship by the St. Louis Business Journal just a couple years ago. Can you share with us, you know, what is social innovation to you? And how can TA providers help entrepreneurs play a role in this space?
Yeah, hey friends, it's so great to be here to see everyone and learn about all the amazing work that all of you all are doing. I think for me, social innovation is just recognizing a problem and figuring out how you can pull community together to solve it. So one of the things that I'm doing here in the Midwest is just redefining what support and what creativity looks like here. Oftentimes people feel like they have to leave the Midwest to be creative, to start businesses, but it really is an amazing space to not only test your concept, but to get the support you need to grow and scale it. So what I've done over the past few years, just being in the ecosystem myself as an entrepreneur, and also recently as a director of an accelerator that supported entrepreneurs with access to capital, I have now decided to open my own co-working space, which opens in mid-January. That space is a little under 5,000 square feet. We'll have 2 floors. The first floor will be focused on content creation because marketing and digital marketing is definitely a need. Having access to the equipment to create marketing for yourself and even the team of creatives to do that is definitely a need. So our space will have photographers, videographers, PR people, and graphic designers to support you with that work, as well as rotating scenery and lounges and things like that. So we always keep it fresh for our entrepreneurs, our influencers, and our creatives. And then the second floor will be open for co-working with modular furniture that can be moved around and create a event space for curated programming for entrepreneurs to do their launch campaigns, to also connect with fellow entrepreneurs and creatives, and just learn the resources they need to succeed. And the last thing that we're doing, our members will get a full team. So they'll get an accountant, an HR and ops person, a sales and marketing person, and a virtual assistant to help them build capacity and grow and scale their business until they can hire their own full-time employees. Or if they want to continue to run a lifestyle business, they still have that team to support them. So they're not solopreneurs doing everything. The other thing that we have is a partnership with Grow with Google. So we provide free digital skills training. By the end of the year, we would have trained over 3,000 people on digital marketing for free. So social entrepreneurship is, again, using your community to solve those problems. Everyone can be a partner, and there's so many resources out here, even as TAs and ESOs. If you physically can't do the things in-house, there's Grow with Google. Square has a program called, I think, Digital Readiness, and so does Verizon, where you can actually chat with HR people and things like that. So that's what we're trying to do in the Midwest, to create opportunity here and to support the entrepreneurs and creatives in our city and our communities.
That's so fascinating. I love the idea, you know, one thing that small businesses oftentimes have in common, those really small businesses that we're talking about here, they are the businesses least likely to have a dedicated HR team, least likely to have access to legal expertise, least likely to have access to the kinds of you know, policy chops or know-how to identify all of the programs that might really support their business. So I love that that space would kind of provide that support staff for them. it almost to me sounds like not a worker cooperative, but a resource cooperative. Do folks ever say that?
Yeah, they do. Like all of our service providers are women and BIPOC entrepreneurs too. So we're trying to solve the problem from both ends, because what you see is there's a lot of women and BIPOC service providers who cap out at 50,000 too. So Next Street just recently did a report and it shows that across the nation, women entrepreneurs and BIPOC entrepreneurs typically hit a ceiling at about $50,000. Our goal is to grow and scale entrepreneurs beyond that, not just entrepreneurs we serve, but the entrepreneurs doing the serving to at least 250,000, because at that point they have options. They can stay a lifestyle business, or they can decide to get access to additional capital and funding to grow.
And that's huge. That's huge. I know this is not the topic of today's conversation, but that gap for responsible lending, particularly for women and business owners of color at that less than $250,000 range, is very needed, and not in the merchant cash advance space. You know, a lot of bad actors in that space, and it's just so great to hear y'all doing great work in supporting small business owners to get to that level. Okay, so one of the next questions I have, and this is for everyone, you know, pandemic happened, obviously. You know, technical assistance providers in all states, I'm almost sure of it, have worked around the clock to provide emergency relief to small business owners. You know, here in California, and I know in a number of your states, there were many programs that were launched, whether it be through surpluses in state budgets or through advocacy, and the role that small businesses playing in their community being so obvious to everyone when their doors are closed. What are some of the programs that you all witnessed in your communities, and which programs do you think will stay and which programs may go? And this is for anyone that happens to have one of those programs in mind.
So I think one of the programs that started in DC around COVID, at least was an opportunity for me to participate in, was the ICCC program, and I believe it's here to stay. And I think that, to your point, you don't know what you have until you lose it or you see that it's gone. And I think a lot of cities, municipalities woke up to the fact that we really have to protect our small businesses. And small businesses were hardest hit by COVID. And, you know, it was very fascinating to watch the news during the very early days or early months of COVID, when a lot of the financial assistance to help kind of save businesses was going to large businesses. And so I think that also made it clear that if the local leadership wasn't doing something to support their small businesses, there was going to be a risk at all of them disappearing. And in DC, I think the DC government did a phenomenal job of using their surpluses to try and save small businesses locally. The Department of Small and Local Business Development issued several grants to help small businesses. The Deputy Mayor's Office on Economic Development and Planning also issued a lot of COVID recovery grants. And I think that another thing that we saw was the support of community financial development institutions. CDFIs all of a sudden now had a much larger platform, because the federal government, when they first issued funding to try to save the business community, they forgot about CDFIs. And CDFIs were like, wait a minute, we need money too to help the businesses that we support. And so I've noticed, especially in DC, that there are several CDFIs. LEDC is one, WakeUp is another one, that truly, you know, stepped up and helped a lot of the businesses that are in my community. So businesses that don't have the ability to access traditional capital. So these are all things that I noticed during COVID and after. And I think a lot of the policies and support, they're here to stay, because you can't have these like knee-jerk emergency reactions when things start falling apart. You have to start now taking the lessons learned and instituting support that will be around the next time we have whatever issue, whether it's a pandemic or something else. And I just want to like make an observation that I love how everyone on this panel has a community component to the work that they're doing. And we all, it like interconnects. And I think that one of the things we all learned during COVID is we can't survive unless we support each other and uplift each other. And building out the Yaleen Beauty Makerspace for me is addressing the racial disparities in the beauty industry for Black-owned businesses and women of color businesses. And we cannot do it alone. So the resources that Keisha is talking about, the app that Irene is talking about, I think for the people who are leaders in their sectors, being able to look back and say, okay, I figured it out for my business. How can I now pass it back and bring as many businesses along and remove kind of some of the toxic competition that you can sometimes find within the small business community, because we need each other. We need each other to grow. We need each other to get to whatever it may be, going from, you know, a $50,000 business to a $250,000 business. And I want to piggyback off of that stat, Keisha. Women-owned, Black-owned businesses, over 80%, make less than $35,000 a year in revenue. And so we have a long way to go to get our businesses to be healthy, sustainable, 6-7-figure businesses.
Thank you for that. That actually, you know, I'm actually kind of hoping I can kick this over to Irene, to Chef Lee. You know, a little bit of a twist on that, but we're seeing all across the country many business owners of color who have been historically marginalized because they engage in food, cottage food operations, home kitchen operations. We have street vendors that face discrimination and just, you know, incredibly racist policies on a local level all over the place. And there seems to be a shift in the way folks are recognizing these businesses the way they never have before. And so I'm wondering if you might speak a little bit to this, this shift, but also, you know, what Rahama was talking about in terms of, you know, the role that that business owners of color, in this instance, Black women business owners, in making so little and being on those margins. What do you think of that shift, and how can TA support, you know, make sure that this shift does everything it can to create quality jobs for these entrepreneurs?
That's such a great question. I think that you know, early on in the pandemic, food workers were essential and, you know, lauded as heroes. And then pretty quickly, we went back to being unskilled labor. So there definitely has been a little bit of irony that we in the restaurant industry have faced in this unique context. That being said, I think that there is a shift to understanding more about the stories behind restaurants, the people who operate them, as our country is increasingly the children of immigrants and recent immigrants themselves. You know, I'm sure lots of us here, our doctor or our lawyer or whoever, they grew up doing their homework at the corner table in their family's restaurant. And so I think that we are starting kind of broadly, culturally, to understand the value of restaurant businesses in a different way. And I think a lot of that is because business owners are finding the courage and also experiencing the pressure to be more transparent, to tell their stories. And I think also by the same token, guests and customers want to see behind the curtain a little more. They want to know about the making of and not just the final product. So for me, I think TA has been a really incredible resource for restaurants in this period. And at the same time, I think a lot of folks who engage in traditional TA have perhaps realized that, oh my gosh, like doing assistance for restaurants is totally different than it is for other businesses. And there have been cases where actually more sort of traditional business TA has done a disservice to restaurants because restaurant businesses are so different culturally, we're so different financially, and the pressures and constraints on owners and managers just aren't the same. And so I'm hoping that as restaurant and food business specific TA continues to become available, it will support that shift in making sure that the restaurant industry stands up for itself and tells its stories, and of course, specifically independent businesses in our industry.
That's incredibly insightful. You know, folks go to a restaurant or a new restaurant because they want to try something new. They want to try, you know, experiencing or dipping their toe into, you know, maybe a different culture or a different place. But when it comes to technical assistance for restaurant businesses, they're all just kind of lumped in the same category, but they're all bringing different experiences to the table. I think that that's incredibly insightful. I have a question for everyone. Can you share a little bit about the role that technical assistance specifically played in the creation of your business? You know, we have, you know, pivoting food trucks, we have commercial kitchens, co-working spaces. I mean, small manufacturing runs the gamut. So how did TA play a role? And this is for everyone, so just jump in.
I mean, I think for me, it's so funny. So I am a huge fan of Monopoly. I don't know how many people love Monopoly out here, but I played it a lot as a kid. And so when I was trying to navigate the TA ESO entrepreneurship support organization ecosystem here locally, I created like this Monopoly board to try to like guide myself through it, because it can be a lot, like it can be very overwhelming. But once I figured out how to navigate it, it helped tremendously. Like every service provider that I got help from is now, you know, a partner of my co-working space. There's a ton happening in a lot of our cities with local universities. I don't think we tap into our local universities or our big institutions enough. Like the university law schools are providing, you know, entrepreneurship support as it relates to like legal advice and supporting you, but like a lot of your operating agreements and those documents that you have to get together at the beginning. There's a ton of banks. I encourage everyone to build a relationship with a banker because you need your own bank account so you don't commingle your money. But a lot of banks are having a lot of resources where if they work with you for a year, you then have access to working capital, lines of credit, introductory credit cards that have 0% APR and things like that. And as you continue to build that relationship, there could even be more there. A lot of CDFIs and banks are earmarking money for small business owners at the community level. So as I started to build more relationships with people and go to them when I needed advice before I needed help, I realized when I needed the help was there. And so a mentor once told me, if you ask for money, you'll get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. So I always try to get in the habit of asking people for advice way earlier before I actually need the money.
That's such a good point, Keisha. And I can't agree more, because money comes through relationships. There's not a single check I've ever gotten that wasn't through a warm introduction or a relationship that I had cultivated over several years, 3, 4, 5 years. And we are partnered with WakeUp here in DC for building our makerspace. And that relationship started back in 2017. So I can't agree more in terms about building kind of the right pipeline of local support to help you get to where you're trying to get to. I'm a believer of free. I built my business with zero money. I had just come back to the US after serving in the Peace Corps. I literally had no money to my name. I had $6,000 that the Peace Corps gives to all volunteers who come back so you can get your first apartment and not be homeless. But I had been a volunteer and had not made money for 2 years. And that's what I used to launch and start Shailene. So everything about building this company has been about bootstrapping, leveraging free resources, and trying to get as much technical assistance as possible. The questions I always have when I see something or want to do something is like, okay, how can I get this done with the least money possible? Because founders like me are undercapitalized, so we have to figure it out. And that's just the reality. Things I will not cut corners on, though, are like accounting and legal. That you just got to pay for. But some of the resources I used early on was the SBA SCORE program. And you can just go to sba.gov and find a SCORE office near you. I used resources at my local business agency. So in DC, it's called DSLBD. And then, of course, I've leveraged resources and technical assistance through programs like ICCC. And I've also done a couple of incubator programs that are here in Washington, DC, like Halcyon is one, which is a social impact incubator here in the district. And honestly, Google was the best technical assistance, I guess. I Googled everything. I was like, okay, I don't know how to source packaging. Okay, Google, how do I source? So I was okay Googling before there was a okay Google. Before, we could just do it on our phones. I would put in every single question I had. I just would Google my question. And then I would see what would come out from there. And then that would point me in another direction that would give me resources here. And I just spent hours just using my computer. And because again, I was in my early 20s with no business experience. I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mom was like, just get a job after you graduate. Like, don't, she was not very happy with me being an entrepreneur. She is now, but back then she was not. And so I had to use creativity, and I had to use all the resources at my fingertips, and the internet was one of them. And so I think that when I also started, there was less around supporting BIPOC-owned brands and like accelerators and incubators. None of that was there. I launched Shailene in 2005. So I think now it's a lot easier, and there's a lot more attention, especially in the last 3 years. It's like everyone has a program now, which I think is a good thing because we've been underserved for so long. There's a huge deficit. But I honestly don't think there's a better time for anyone who's either trying to start a business or grow a business to get the resources that they need. I will touch upon what Irene said earlier, though, in terms of technical assistance is different for like restaurant businesses than it is for other businesses. I also think there's a huge gap in businesses that are scaling. And the resources and technical assistance you need when you've hit 6 figures, 7 figures is very different from someone who's still trying to make it. And I think there's a missing middle where even though I've gotten to a certain level of success, I still need help. But it's kind of like I've been priced out because now I'm generating sufficient revenue. I have a team, but I still need help because I started this with absolutely no experience. And each level you get to, there's another round of challenges that you have to navigate.
I think that's such a great segue, Rahama. My experience with technical assistance was primarily through the Workforce Training Fund here in Massachusetts, which is a pretty well-kept secret, and it really shouldn't be because every employer in Massachusetts pays into it and is eligible to get $30,000 of free workforce training every year. And what I'll say, Rahama, to your point, is that question of scale, businesses that are scaling, that are trying to go to the next level, there are a lot of resources for startups. But I think the way a lot of restaurants work is that for a long time, the owner operator works in the restaurant every single day. They are in the business, they are in the deep fryer, they are on the line. And the question is, how do you go from working in the business to working on the business? How do you kind of get yourself off of that hamster wheel? And our work with the training fund was really about how do we free up the owner and the managers to really think about growth mode for this business. So we worked with a firm that helped us implement open book management at Maymay. Some of you may know open book management, a philosophy basically where everybody in the business learns about basic financials, and then they get to see those basic financials, and then they get structured opportunities to actually improve the performance of the business. Long story short is that it's all about helping employees think like owners and managers. And that was what transformed Maymay for me, from something that was a little bit of a monkey on my back to something that gave me a lot of hope about not just the future of my business, but the future of the industry broadly. And so now with PrepShift, I am seeking to bring that benefit and those workforce training dollars to as many restaurants as we can. Because if you go onto the Workforce Training Fund website, a lot of the trainings are like Six Sigma for executives. And like, that's great, but that is actually not who I think really needs the help. And there were times where I felt like, gosh, you know, like I don't have an MBA. Who am I to be offering technical assistance to other restaurants? But when you look at the list of the providers, nobody's actually done it. Nobody's run a restaurant, right? And so for us, we really, again, want to take the best practices and the best of what we were privileged to have access to and to make sure we can share it with as many people as possible.
Can I piggyback off of that, Bianca? So another thing that I did that was not really TA or ESO related, I forced myself to meet 100 people in 100 days. And by meeting so many people and putting my idea out there, people just kept referring me to other people and then referring me here and there. So how I split that 100, I went and found 20 people who are going to be my target customer or could be my target customer. And I met with them to get feedback about my idea. I met with 20 people not in my industry because I'm like, if it makes sense to them, then I can craft it in a way for it to make sense for people in my industry. Then I went and met with 20 people in the TA and ESO space. I met with 20 family, friends, mentors, advocates, sponsors, and then I left 20 slots open for people to recommend people for me to meet with. And so by meeting with those 100 people, it really was night and day for me to get the co-working space up and running. So I opened the doors on 11/1. The space has been booked almost every week. We've already generated $40,000 in sales and revenue with the space. And by the end of the month, we probably will be close to 50 or 60. So within 1 month of operation, the space has generated crazy amounts of sales and revenue. And it's because I did all of that pre-work in the beginning, the previous 3 months of just meeting with so many people, getting the idea out there, fine tuning it to make sure that when I did release and I'm still in like my pilot phase, right? When I did release the pilot phase, it still could prove successful.
Can I jump in here really quickly, Bianca? Irene, I just had a follow-up question to what you talked about around OBM. In terms of observation, do you think that the team members and the staff members who do get that kind of financial management training and transparency and visibility, does it make them feel more of a responsibility to achieve financial goals?
I would say yes, absolutely. Another question that I get a lot that's kind of related to that is like, oh, did it help your retention? And the answer to that is like, our retention was already pretty good and Open Book made it better. And so what I would say in response to your question as well is our team already cared about the business and Open Book made them more effective. So one example is we spent about 12 weeks trying to lower our cost of goods percentage. And we told the team, you can change menu prices, you can negotiate with our vendors, you can alter recipes, you can implement waste tracking systems, and any money that you save us for the next 12 weeks goes to you. It goes into a pool for the staff. And then after that, the business continues to realize the benefits of those changes. And so just for that example, we were able to have a pool of $10,000 that got paid out to the entire team based on hours worked. And so I think Open Book is just one tool in a kind of wide variety of tools around building culture. But once again, I think it really is about aligning the business owner and their teams. I am willing to say openly that as a business owner, there are days where I feel like my staff are trying to kill me, and I think that resentment is one of those really powerful, destructive feelings. And it's very common, I think, in small businesses where we really care about the work, we really care about each other. But if we feel like we are in an adversarial relationship, that can become really, really toxic. And so I felt like it made my team understand me a lot more. It gave them more insight into like, oh, like maybe that's why Irene is stressed out today. Or, oh yeah, like I saw the labor numbers and like, that's why Irene is like trying to cut people early, So it's just the perspective, I think, the context. And honestly, like people deserve that. Like they deserve to know what's going on. And so that's something that I think is true for both workers and for owners. And that's part of why I'm so passionate about restaurant-specific bookkeeping and accounting. Like owners deserve to understand what's happening in their own businesses. And if the service providers aren't able to offer that to them, then they need a new bookkeeper. So yeah, I think, data information is everything, especially in the restaurant industry, where the average profit margin before COVID for an independent restaurant was like 4%.
I mean, I think that's just, my mind is totally blown. I've never heard of open book management before. And I think that that's so key because what we hear from restaurants all the time, we've done some advocacy work among franchisee operators, for example, and the way that their business models are structured makes it so that the only way that folks can reduce costs is simply by reducing labor or changing labor. And I love that because it shifts not only the power to the folks that are doing the work, but it also encourages in the restaurant industry looking at other ways to save money as opposed to just reducing labor costs, which I think is so old news and unhelpful. Do folks have anything else they'd like to add in terms of the TA programs that they've participated in, including ICIC, of course, and the folks that brought us all here today. Okay, well, with that, I'm super excited. This is one of my favorite parts of a panel discussion. We are opening it up to questions from the audience. So I'm not sure if folks are able to raise their hand and then we can unmute you and then you can speak, or feel free to use the chat box to drop your questions into the chat. There are a bunch of folks from ICIC on here and we can tackle it there. But if you have a question for these amazing small business owners, don't be shy. Raise your hand and we would love to incorporate your thoughts into the conversation.
Yeah, folks, please don't be afraid to turn on them cameras, come off mute, and any questions you may have. These four women have done an amazing job, and I'm sure they can answer anything that you have on your mind.
While people are thinking, I will just go back and make a quick plug for the Gentler, Kinder Shark Tank program that ICIC does. We pitched the Maymay Dumpling Company last year for that Shark Tank. And for me, I think it was the first time we had actually said out loud what we had been thinking about for months. And that was so important for us to be able to kind of speak it in front of people. And that really was what gave us the courage to do what was a really significant pivot. And so I think it's just kind of an example of how creating space allows more things to kind of come into reality. And as entrepreneurs, I think often we are very crowded in our minds and in our work.
Thank you, Irene. Here, we've
Okay.
got one good question.
Yay, go ahead, Jared, you got it, sorry.
Yeah. From Sonia, do you have any resources to help develop your team members? Like any, I don't know, I guess that would be like a training resource or other program or outside organization that you might use, or any particular tips, strategies that you have to help to get those team members where you need them to be or where they want to be.
Well, we heard about the workforce training program in Massachusetts. That sounds like a really great resource. Sonia, it might be helpful to type in where you're tuning in from. But yeah, I mean, developing your team, I think open book management might be an idea of how to get your team more involved. Any other ideas from the panelists?
I think that I'll just make a plug that whether it's open book management or some other version of transparency and engagement, I think communication and the sharing of information is so important, especially in a small business. I know that for many years, I was not very good at sharing important information with my team because I either thought they already knew it because I knew it, or I didn't think it was that important. But it kind of goes back to my earlier point that context really matters. And it's that context that gives meaning to the work people do every day, even if the work does not seem meaningful. And so I think that even just building great systems and norms around communication is an incredible way to invest in one's team. And a lot of good things flow out of that. And it sets up the infrastructure and the kind of expectation that there will be programming, that there will be training, that there will be opportunities.
Yeah, Irene is spot on. I used to serve as a director of HR, did that work for like 4 years. And the biggest complaint from employees is communication and lack of communication. And so what I encourage small businesses to do first is to understand how you communicate. There's a really simple test called the color test where your employees can take it. If you email me, I just dropped my email in the chat. I actually have a digital version that I can send you. And it takes like 2 minutes, if that. And basically it assigns you a color. And from that color, it tells you how you best communicate. Having that transparency across your organization to understand how not only you communicate, but others communicate, incorporating that color into the culture is really great because then others can see how others communicate. I'm just starting there with understanding how you communicate is great. And then the second thing I say is, like Irene said, having like weekly team meetings. And if you can't do a weekly team meeting, some type of weekly memo that you email out just to let people know what's going on. For some organizations, you may even want to do a daily stand-up if things are constantly changing. It's a daily 15-minute meeting that you can do just to, again, communicate with each other. But communication is spot.
Can I just add to this, because people management is very difficult. You can communicate multiple times in different ways and people will still not feel like they're getting the information that they need. And so I just want to give space for that, because sometimes I feel that people in leadership, we have so much pressure to do everything, do it right, give all the resources. But I think it's important to establish that in a work environment, it's a two-way street. Your team members have to also be contributing. They also have to communicate. If something is not working well, you have to have the ability for there to be mutual feedback, because we put so much pressure on us. I think to your point earlier, Irene, yeah, you can feel like your team is like out to get you sometimes. And I think that when you're doing your culture building, it's really important to establish very early on in your team that there is, at least for me, there is no hierarchy. That I'm not the boss. Don't call me the boss. We are a team. I support you. You also support me. And making sure that that is the baseline from where you start from is really important, because I found myself in situations where team members or previous team members have a disconnect between responsibility because they're like, oh, well, this is not my company, or I'm not the boss. And so someone else will like pick up where I leave off. And I think not having like a very clear standard of expectations in terms of what you expect will create some of that tension that can happen like on a team. The other thing I wanted to say in terms of resources, to Sonia's point, is there are technology tools that can help with a lot of the things that we're talking about. We use Gusto, which is a payroll and HR software that pretty much helps with the regulatory environment so that we're paying our taxes appropriately, our payroll taxes, that we're onboarding team members appropriately. We can do everything in Gusto. And to what Keisha said, like many small businesses do not have a fully built out HR department. And so you have to supplement what you don't have with some of the technology tools that are out there and the software that's out there that can help you so you don't run into regulatory and legal issues, because you can very quickly run into legal issues if you're not doing things the right way, or if a staff member like gets offended by something, next thing you know, you're being sued. You know, that's an extreme case, of course, but just saying, you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, and there are tools out there that can help you with that. And I'm just going to drop into the chat a survey for all of you who know beauty entrepreneurs or beauty businesses who are looking for ways to address manufacturing barriers. We are doing a survey. We're collecting information through February to essentially get a sense of what the needs are, and so that we can create solutions that match the needs that are out there. So if you can share it, we would appreciate it.
Are you putting, oh, there it is. Okay, I was gonna say, I don't see it in the chat. This is
I have a
fantastic.
question.
Yeah, 1 second. Sorry, I just want to make sure. How are we on time, Jared? Do we have time for one more question? Listen, I think we can do a question if you can keep it to 30 seconds. Can you? Maybe we need a gentle Shark Tank for this one, but if you could keep it brief, let's do it.
Certainly. So I think I work for a CDFI, and I think one of the challenges business owners have is not knowing how much they should budget for some of these additional services that you all mentioned. So legal, human resources, digital marketing. What's a benchmark? Where can we find benchmarks to tell people, you know, how much they should budget for some of those services, so that they're not thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to cost $1 zillion. I'm just not even going to, you know, check it out, pursue it.
That's such a hard question to answer, honestly, simply because it depends on the phase of business you're in, what you can afford. I always say you need to look at your financial model in order to really figure out what you can afford. Supplement it with as many resources as you can, and then budget out the things that you really feel based on your business model will help you move in the right direction in terms of your bottom line. So it's really hard to kind of give, you know, a standard response, because everyone's business is different. Everyone's business strategies are different. And something that I might prioritize for a beauty-based CPG business might be very different from what Irene would prioritize for a restaurant business, or Keisha for a co-working business. But I think the best advice I can give is, what is your financial model telling you? Run your business from your financial model. Run your business based on your projections, based on your actuals, and then figure out, like, you know, where am I willing to spend the money that will get me to achieving this milestone that I need to achieve by this quarter or before the end of the year. That's, you know, but if you were to say, you know, like PR, how much should I spend in PR? I've rarely seen a PR firm that does good work under $3,000 a month. You know, that's just one example.
That's really helpful, y'all. And we are at time. With that, I just want to personally thank all of the panelists for your amazing insights. I've been G-chatting my program director about all of the exciting topics of conversation, as well as taking rigorous notes. So I just wanted to say thank you. And with that, let me kick it back to Jared and the ICIC team who made everything today possible.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bianca. You did a fantastic job. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to the audience for your questions. We're right at time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Thank you guys for being at the conference, and we hope to see you again soon. And bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.